It was past 3 in the morning, but Pastor Richard was still awake in his study. He peered at the large Bible before him and all around his study. It's been 17 years of hard service to God, and lately, it looked like he had been scammed all those years. Early years of service had been beautiful. He had nothing to worry, but just to ensure he was in tune with God. Those days, God assured him he was going to have a mega congregation. He didn't go after God because of what he had to offer. He truly chased after God because he loved him. After he got married to Shade, the love of his life, responsibility doubled, and that was when he started putting pressures on God's promises. 10 years had gone and nothing to show for it. Everywhere was so tight that at a point, he thought he needed deliverance. He had gone to many other church programs and even conducted personal deliverance, but nothing changed. Instead, everything grew worse. Tears gathered in his eyes and he blinked, allowing them to flow. He thought of Ope, his only child, and tears flowed even more. He had never been able to give him the life he wanted. What kind of life is this? Am I even called to ministry? Pastor Richard said to himself as tears flowed more. Next morning, Pastor Richard prepared to attend the central meeting with the pastors of his small church. It was like poverty flowed like an oil from him to all his assistant pastors and even the members. He was angry on some days when he looked at his members, their shoes and clothes drenched of poverty. As he hurried through the road, he heard a familiar voice screaming, "Rich!" That was the name he was called in the ministry school days. He turned to see Pastor Nick smiling at him. He was too stunned to even speak or say a word. Nick was his friend back then in the ministry school. After they graduated, they lost contact, and the next Pastor Richard would see was Nick's poster flying all around. On some days, he had dreamt of meeting Nick. He always felt a meeting with him would solve his ministry challenge. So, seeing Nick, his one-time friend and now big pastor on posters, smiling at him felt more a dream than reality. My brother, life has really been tough. Ministry is not working at all for me, Pastor Richard expressed to Nick after they had exchanged pleasantries suitable for the moment. Well, that's because you are punching the wrong button, Pastor Nick replied after some seconds of laughter. Wrong button? Richard asked in confusion. Yes, my brother, there are systems to these things. See me in my office on Monday morning. We have a lot to trash, Pastor Nick said and sped off, the tires of his Honda car raising a bland dust and leaving Pastor Richard coughing. That weekend, the weekend that should lead to the Monday, felt like the longest weekend for Pastor Richard. He couldn't wait. This felt like an answered prayer. He was determined and resolute to make it in ministry. 10 years no be beans abeg, he kept saying to himself. He had told Shade about Nick the very day he saw him. Shade was the supportive wife of all season. Her husband's joy was her pride. So, seeing her husband excited, she rejoiced and danced. It could only mean something good would happen. Seconds rolled sluggishly for Richard, but the early hours of Monday morning, he began to feel restless. Something was wrong. Since he met Nick, he prayed less and pondered more on the kind of life he wanted. I'll buy a car like Nick. I'll build a big auditorium. My members will be rich, and I'll kick the poor ones out of the church. Only rich members will be allowed, Pastor Richard said, laughing and excited. The restlessness increased as the seconds increased. He finally got a hold of himself and knelt to pray. At that posture, he slept off and had a surprising dream. In that dream, he was stripped of the suit he wore and was putting on rags. In his hands were toy cars and toy houses. He also saw Pastor Nick coming to him in same rags with toy cars and toy houses in his hand. Then he woke up.